Hi everybody, good morning. Thanks for joining this webinar. I'm Sridhar, CEO and founder at iEnabler. At iEnabler, we help companies to chart the next growth curve via innovation. We have a software platform to enable business success, and we provide advisory services too. Great, so thanks for joining me. So before we get started, a quick disclaimer about the title. An interesting title. This is a question that I was tagged in Quora, and my marketing folks loved that. So that's how we went with this title. Well, the idea of this webinar is not to really mimic these individuals. They've been successful, they have done what they have done, but then we want to understand the art and science of building great companies that they represented. So that's the intent of this webinar. Okay, what are the key takeaways? One, we want to see how to take ideas from whiteboard to reality, how to copy-proof your product or business, how to become a category leader in your business. I know it's a tall ask to cover all these points in 45 minutes, but let me tell you that this is a webinar series and we'll address each one of these questions in a greater detail in the upcoming webinar. Also, let me tell you that you're all auto-registered for all the future webinars. So we're going to cover each one of these points there. So let's start by asking this question. What are your aspirations as a business? What is that you're really aspiring? Do you want to be the next unicorn? Are you looking at a big buyover, takeover? Or is IPO your goal? So let's look at the chances today. Here I have some data from CNB Insights. 30% of tech startups succeed beyond 20 months from their first financing round. So 70% of them struggle. Only 3% of consumer hardware startups enjoy success after being seed crowdfunded. 97% of them become zombies. You don't hear them out. Also, 25% of venture-backed startups succeed, which means 75% of them fail. Right? So, what's happening here? So, in the context of this failure, let us see what did those 25% of business, what did they do differently? What sets successful business apart? So, that's a point that I want to discuss. Well, it's a heavy slide, right? Few trillions. Is it luck that they were successful, or are they extraordinarily gifted? Maybe, we don't know. But then something that's very clear from our research is each one of them used innovation as a differentiator to build product leadership, right? So let's look at some data. I mean, all of us are AWS users today, right? Look at the numbers that they have clocked. 18 billion in sales in 2017 with an operating income of 4.3 billion. That's a real market maker, right? So shifting from desktop all the way to cloud. So AWS is a market maker. Look at what iPhone did. They brought in the touch computing. They created a new category. Same with the Tesla. They not only build the electric vehicle, but also infinitely scalable clean energy generation and multiple storage products there. So they are category creators. We also have product innovation leaders here. Look at Facebook. Well, not the first social networking site, but then the network effect that they brought in, the continuous news feeds that they brought in on a continuum basis, that differentiated. And if I remember, Google is the 18th search engine to come up, but then the page rank did all the trick, right? The search, which led to better results. So we have seen how tech giants have used innovation as a product differentiator. Let's go back and see how large enterprises are using innovation. Large enterprises like GE, Unilever, the Times of India, a well-known publishing house in India, they are using innovation as a growth strategy. Let's look at some data, some examples. So look at Unilever. What they did in emerging markets like India, China, they came out with sachets. They came out with small packaging of body wash. that created a new set of customers, and now they are growing on that. So they used innovation as a growth strategy. And look at what GE did, the entire concept of reverse innovation. Reverse innovation is a strategy of innovating in emerging markets and then distributing or marketing this innovation in developed markets, be it their tomography, the ECG, right? So they did invention in emerging markets and then they took it to the developed markets. So the reverse innovation as a growth strategy there. Another interesting example from the publishing house, the media. So what is this? World over, I'm sure all of you know that newspaper readership is kind of going down. Well, not in India, especially with this newspaper, the Times Group, the Times of India. Times of India is a top media publishing house. It is increasing its readership. You know why? It's all because of a novel program that they created called Times Newspaper in Education, NIE. And the idea was to catch students young and introduce them to something that is beyond the curriculum. And once the students got hooked to it, they were always with the Times. And that's how their readership is only increasing. So innovation is not just used to build product leadership, but it is also used as a growth strategy, as a growth enabler. So with that, let's see, as an entrepreneur, here is a question that we are asking. Can I use innovation to achieve product market fit, differentiation, growth? Well, the answer is certainly yes. That's a proof there, right? So the cumulative valuation of unicorns, close to $8-10 billion. So no matter what size of company you are, you can leverage innovation, be it in product, be it in growth, or creating a business differentiation, you can actually use innovation. So with iEnabler, we are a research company. So we do a lot of research. We said, how do successful business think? So what do they do? So what should be their think model? We found that there was something very common. So successful businesses, they differentiate the core offering. When I say core offering, it could be the product or it could be the service. They differentiate the core offering. They create amazing value proposition to the customers. They create value. And they don't make it as just one-off. They do it on a repeated basis. They sustain innovation. They build a company to sustain that innovation. So they differentiate the core offering, create value, and they build a company to sustain innovation. With this, again, based on research, we said the three important pillars for structured innovation. One is to think deep. Two, innovate fast. And three is to execute lean. Think deep, innovate fast, execute lean. This completely goes against the value model, right? Where people say, well, fail fast. Are we building a business to fail? Not really, but then that's kind of an adage, right? So people want to fail for the sake of it. We don't want you to be doing that. Let's think deep. Let's look at the entire ecosystem, see what is kind of coming up, understand the competition, understand the buyer. So that's where the thinking really matters. You got to innovate fast. You need to use think models, right? You need to up your bar. So then, yes, while executing, you don't have to go and do everything in one go. That's where you kind of, systematically build your the proof of concept, prototype, minimal viable product, MVPs, all that. So that's where execute lean comes in. So we have three success factors: differentiating the core, creating the value, building a company that sustains innovation. And with that, you have think deep, innovate fast, execute lean. So what we have done is we have come out with a 3x3 kind of a matrix here. So for example, let's say you want to differentiate the core offering. So how does think deep help you in doing this? Well, by thinking deep, you can find your purpose. You can elevate your idea. What do I mean by elevate your idea? Here is a statistic from a body called TWIST, the Theory of Inventive Problem Solving, where they say that most of the ideas that we come up today are the ideas that our organization is aware of or our industries knows about it. Do we get a patent? Do we get an IP? Certainly yes, but then they're not really game changers. We don't really know how to elevate the ideas. In fact, MIT Sloan brought up a report recently. They said we are in dearth of good ideas. So that's where elevating idea matters a lot. So that's where deep thinking helps you. Similarly, when you want to innovate fast, right? So there are other think models that you have to use. You have to really look at a dream solution, a moonshot, and then build your system towards that. At the executing lean, so how can you do it? So all that you have to do is just follow this 3x3 matrix that you have, and you will find solutions to most of the challenges that you have. So let's look at a scenario to play this, right? So a lot of data. So let's look at a scenario to kind of make sense. Let's see how we can actually use this. Here is Noah, a fifth grader. He comes early from the school. His parents go to work, and it's a double income household, right? And what is the idea? Let's say we want to build some kind of a buddy for him, right? So let's wear the entrepreneur hat. Entrepreneur in you and me would look at this as an opportunity. So what's an opportunity? So here we are talking about working parents, right? So in a society with working parents, children have been returning from school to empty homes, or they have nanny who could do some basic supervision. An entrepreneur here, you would see this as an opportunity to provide some kind of a virtual buddy to this segment of children. Remember, it's not a novel idea, right? We always have some kind of virtual assist, virtual buddies. So, I mean, there are lots of apps today in the marketplace, and you also know that there are a lot of electronic pets in the market. So, but then entrepreneur who is looking at this as an opportunity. So what are his goals? He wants to go there and create a disruptive innovation, or he wants to kind of create a breakthrough model, right? So he wants to have great returns, and he wants to kind of copy proof his idea. So he wants to create that unfair competitive advantage. So that is something that he wants to do. So let's see what our entrepreneur would come up with for Noah, right? So using structured innovation technique, so what can we do? How can we think of a virtual buddy for Noah? Well, what do those numbers indicate? Well, we have 49 different types of framework to address different problem sets, and we'll share some of them here. So let's start with the first one. The first think model here is inverse thinking. So what is this inverse thinking? Inverse thinking is used as a problem solving method. Most of us ask questions like, where is the problem? When is the problem? Why is this a problem? Whereas in inverse thinking, it helps you to be creative and break out of old ways of thinking. What are we doing here? You will think about the opposite of what you want to achieve. You will say, what is not a problem? Where is it not a problem? Who is Noah not comfortable with? How is it not a problem for Noah? You see that? This will actually give us much more insight. For example, look at the point. What is not a problem for Noah? Playing football with his friends, munching his favorite chip, or having fun at Disney World, right? Or watching his favorite cartoon. He would love to do that. But what is his problem? Doing his math homework or being alone in the home, right? So this is how a technique like inverse thinking can be, a think model like inverse thinking can be applied. So we got the first one. What's a step 2? Landscape analysis. We also call this as an ecosystem analysis. What is this? I'm sure all of us have phones. Let's say if you look at the phone, if I take the phone as a system, what is a subsystem? All the elements that are there inside the phone. I mean the circuit, the battery, right, the glass, all that has gone into building that phone is the subsystem. What is a super system? The carrier. It could be your AT&T, the Sprints, the user of the phone, right? So they're all in the super system space. So system, subsystem, and the super system. Well, if this is what we have today, what did we have in the past? We had a fixed line, isn't it? Right? So it was a hard line, so we had a fixed line connection. What could we potentially have in the future? Is it an iWatch? Or we don't know what is coming up in the future, right? What could happen in the subsystem? What could happen in the super system? The same framework we are going to apply here for Noah's case, right? Now that he's a fifth grader, he's spending a good amount of time in the school, right, compared to his past where he was third grader. Going forward, he would spend more of his time in the classwork, right, in the school. And so the virtual buddy that we are going to build has to be also very futuristic. So with this technique, you can kind of understand what is there in the subsystem, what is there in the super system. You can also understand and appreciate what has happened in the past, learn some lessons from that, and you can also look at the future and figure out what is it that you would be getting into. So the third important think model that I want to introduce you to is called as dream solution or ideality. What is dream solution? Let's close our eyes and think of what would be a dream solution for Noah, a fifth grader. He comes home, let's say he is alone. So what would be an ideal virtual buddy for him, right? So what is the best part? I mean, if you look at it, he would love to spend more time with his friends, play football. He probably wants to get the Disney park experience every now and then. Maybe wants to watch cartoon of his choice. Would probably like to have his parents' guidance, right, whenever he wants it. Well, what does he not like to do? Maybe he may not like to do his math work, or he may end up eating some junk food. So that could harm his systems. And are there any cost items here? Yes. Parents' work hours being consumed at times, if they have to take care of Noah, or if he wants to go to, let's say, a Disney park every now and then, the kind of money that is spent in that. So what are we essentially doing? Here, we are looking at all the useful functions that Noah wants, all the harmful functions that he may not want, and all the cost items that are incurred. So what is a dream solution? A dream solution is providing more and more useful functions and reducing the harmful function and the cost item. So imagine an equation where we have a sum of all useful function at the top, and in the denominator you have sum of all the harmful function plus summation of all the cost, and we want the denominator to be 0. So we are talking about an ideality state here, right? A state where we want Noah to have all the useful functions and no harmful function and no cost items at all. So this, we are not only doing it from Noah's perspective, we are also looking at their parents. What do their parents want? They want him to eat healthy food. They want him to have a balance between the study and play. And what would his teachers like? They want him to focus on finishing classwork. They want him to be regular to the school. So in this think model, you're looking at multiple stakeholders, understanding their dream solutions in order to go to the next stage. And that next stage is the ideation stage. So what all did we do? We started with inverse thinking, where we asked the opposite questions. We did landscape analysis to understand the entire ecosystem. We did a dream solution. We got insights from multiple stakeholder perspective. Now we are using all this to kind of proceed towards ideation. So what could be my virtual buddy like? A virtual buddy is something that is going to play with me, gets my friends to play with me, chooses the right game that I would like to play, knows the right food that I want to eat, right? It gives me a real experience of a park or a place that I want to visit. It could consult the doctor when I'm unwell. It could help me take the right medicine. It's more like an extension of Noah, right? a great virtual buddy. Now that you have this concept, right, using all the think models and the ideation that you did, well, there are multiple triggers for you to ideate. There are a bunch of divergent techniques. There are a bunch of convergent techniques. Let's say using all that you have arrived at this virtual buddy. Now, the next thing that we have to do is we want to find out, well, is this something that only Noah's parents desire? Or is this something that, Noah's friends and their parents also desire? So now we want to look at the customer segment who want this. So we are looking at customer desirability. Well, here we are talking about something like integration with the doctor, integration with the camera. So we also want to figure out, is this something that is technically feasible, right? So technical feasibility becomes important. And what is the price point? At what price point do people want to, pay for something like this? So that's the economic viability. So we are looking at customer desirability, technical feasibility, economic viability, and long-term sustainability, right? So you are going to use the concept that you developed, and you are going to kind of put them in this matrix. You are going to grade them, and once you have a reasonably good number of metrics, good score, you are going to proceed to developing that. So we have answered the first question. So how to take your ideas all the way from the whiteboard to the marketplace. At least, from to the concept level. So for sustainable innovation, you got to repeat this process. When I say repeat the process, you got to follow the innovation structures. You got to do the ideation, like I said, divergent, convergent ideas, use the desirability, feasibility, viability matrix to kind of prioritize your concepts, and also understand the sweet spot, right? That's where all the experimentation would come up. So you want to create that minimum awesome product or minimum viable product, right? You want to have a right fitment with cost benefit analysis. So on a long term, you need to do this continuously. Okay, now that we spoke about the first one, let's look at the second objective that we had. We said, how do we provision for competitors, right? Who can replicate our idea, make it bigger, or they may exploit our next market. So how do we position ourselves? In short, how do we copy-proof our business? Well, I'm sure you all heard about Rocket Internet, right? So they are like a startup clone factory, and they are very open about it, so they are very happy to do this. So you see there the report from Hustle where they say they believe in ruthlessly copying Silicon Valley startups. Here is our data. Look at what Groupon had to pay to the City deal. So they had to buy City deal for 170 million to enter Europe just 5 months after City deal's inception. And look at what happened to eBay. Alando, the eBay's clone, was sold to eBay for $50 million after being in business for just 100 days. So what is that you and me should do? How do we really copy proof? Well, the obvious answer that most of us think here is about patents, creating an intellectual property. Sure, helps, especially if you have some kind of a device play. That is a really good way to go about. But then, as you know, patent process can be expensive, also time consuming, right? So we may not really have all the time to do this. What else can we do? It can also be about the way you design and deliver your offering. Think of the iTunes and iPod, right? So iPod was great in design and function, but then the seamless integration with iTunes did the magic. And of course, now you have the Spotify and so on. What Tesla car is doing, the car, the battery, the charging station, it's an awesome integration of all these things. What iPhone and iOS did. So you can also kind of, copy proof your business by design and by the way you deliver, so you can kind of control the super system and the system, or you can control the system and the subsystem to kind of have a great advantage. Or you should also bank on one of these unfair competitive advantages. Like what? For example, experience. Let's say you are building a you are building a healthcare product, and you have last 30 years you have been in healthcare. So that could be a great experience. People cannot easily copy that, right? Or process, you've created a new process, a technological process that may be difficult for people to quickly, copy. Or you are hooked on to a great network which can give you that uplift very quickly. So any of these things could help you to kind of copy proof your business, right? Um, the third question that we had was how to become a category leader in your business. One of my favorite topics. So category creation. So look at some of the data. Here is a data from HBR. So, well, category creators are small part of the Fortune 100 list of fast growing companies, but they are accounting for much of the group's growth. Look at that 74% there in the incremental market cap growth, right? So category creators are now taking significant position. I love the story about Chobani, right? I mean, all of you who have tasted this, the Greek yogurt, the low-fat Greek yogurt, right? So they created a market for thicker, creamier, high-protein yogurt, a market that's now in the range of close to $1 billion. And they have now a lot of competitors, right? So that's a great product, a new category. Also, the GE Healthcare created this Mac 400 ECG machine. Well, the one that they had earlier was expensive, so they had to redo the whole thing. They had to bring down the cost. So they did something called breakthrough product innovation. And they also changed the business model. So now, instead of the doctor using these ECG machines, the healthcare workers can use it, right? So they're shifting that play there. So what's happening with the iWatch? So you and me could probably go and check that, right? So whenever you are trying to create a new category, so one, you need to have breakthrough product innovation plus the business model innovation. So that is something that you will have to take care of. Well, I'm on dot 30 minutes into this webinar. I would like to take few questions. Now the floor is open for questions. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to take the questions now. I'm just checking your chat and seeing if there are any questions that we have. So anybody there? So any questions? Right. So I have got one question. How does product market fit come into play and how does innovation help here? Great. Okay. When I talk about product market fit, okay. So when I talk about the product market fit here, look what's happening in the marketplace today. So people are going out there creating new products, and we know what's happening with the product failure, right? So this is where a process like don't jump into the ideas space. Go back and do a thorough problem analysis first. So do your problem discovery first. Understand what are the articulated needs, or it could be a latent or unarticulated needs first, and then proceed to build the product, right? So that's where you can use all the think models, and innovation can be a great differentiator in not only looking at the problem, the way you look at the problem, especially the latent problem, also looking at the opportunity space, and then doing ideation. In all these cases, when you want to create a good product market fit, innovation can come as a handy tool or as a handy process. Any other question? Oh, yes. So here is a question that I have. Once I go through the whole process and arrive at a solution, then we patent that solution? Oh, yeah, definitely yes. You can patent that solution. Again, for you to patent a solution, there are few factors that you have to look at. It should be non-obvious. There has to be a novelty, and there has to be a utility factor. And if you can convince the attorney that, the innovation that you have come out with has novelty, it is non-obvious, and then there is a utility factor, definitely yes, you can go ahead and patent the solution. Sure. Oh, yeah. So, do we have best practice for discovering market problems? Yes. I mean, one of the ways that we go ahead and recommend people to do it, yes, I recommend you to start with problem first approach. The think models, the one that I discussed today was about inverse thinking, right? So where you kind of look at problem from multiple perspectives. I would also encourage you to, probably have a one-on-one call with me where I would walk you through another technique where you can also look at unarticulated needs, right? Especially some of us who are creating the next gen products, we also want to know that latent needs. So yes, techniques like the inverse thinking, the landscape analysis, ideality, all these are some techniques that you can use to discover your market problems. Oh, okay, great. How many more techniques are there to ideate? In the iEnabler catalog, we have something like 49 techniques, 49 think models. That's a number that we have. And we are only creating more and more techniques. Every single day you find we adding more and more think models. But again, depends upon the domain that you are in. What we have done in iEnabler is based on a particular industry segment and the kind of problem that you are solving, the platform will actually come out with a bunch of think models. So we have also done that. So, but then, yes, the list is big one, 49. You can also look at our blogs. I've kind of given you some insights about these ideation techniques. You can always go there and check out more. I will close the questions and I'll tell you what we have to do next. So using iEnabler software platform, you can validate ideas, differentiate business, accelerate growth. We also provide advisory services. Our clients have used iEnabler to discover new products, generate IP, create new business models, discover new or adjacent markets, create an unfair competitive advantage. So you can go to our website, you will find multiple cases there, iEnabler.co. Also, what I would want to give you is, please go ahead and schedule a 30 minutes free discovery call with me. I want to help you to chart next growth curve for your business. We will figure out if you are stuck, where you are stuck. We will ask you what are your aspiration goals for your business. So go ahead and send me an email. It is sridhar@ienabler.co, sridhar@ienabler.co. All that you have to do is just send me an email. I'll open up my calendar and you can schedule a 30 minutes free discovery call. So thanks a lot for joining me today. It was wonderful to have you. Thank you.